Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being with us today. We hope you're having a great week and being safe out there. As usual, we have a couple updates. So thanks for through that, some really important updates. And Dr. Makower is our speaker today, which we're really excited about. So we're looking forward to hearing from him. I want to next turn over to Dr. Salas. Dr. Salas, thank you for being here and updating as well.
Sure. Thanks so much, Dr. Azdalga. I just wanted to remind folks that today, this afternoon at 5 p.m., we're having a session for kind of tips and then feedback for anyone who's interested in applying for the Chair's Diversity Investigator Awards, which the deadline for those is at the end of the month. So if you're thinking about applying this year or thinking about applying next year, or just want to hear some more about what the grant process looks like, join us. I'm going to drop the link for the registration in the chat, and I hope to see y'all later today. Again, that's 5 p.m. today. Do you want me to? I'll just turn it over to Tamara. Dr. Dunn is next.
Dr. Dunn, you're still muted.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry, I thought I hit it. I guess I did not. This Sunday, June 19th, marks Juneteenth, which is when the last of the enslaved people in the United States found out that they were free from slavery. So, as part of that celebration, we are going to be having a discussion after a screening of Black Men in White Coats, a documentary that was made by Dr. Dale Okorodudu, and he will be here with us virtually, as well as our very own Dr. Donald Golden and Dr. Robert Dodd. So we'll be having a conversation and get their perspective as Black Men in White Coats. The discussion will take place next Thursday, June 23rd from 12 to 1 p.m. And I will stick the registration in the chat. There are also going to be several wonderful community events happening for Juneteenth. So I urge you all to check them out. I'll be singing at one in Los Altos. So just a little selfless plug there. Shameless. So with that, I will turn it back over to Dr. Azdalga. Happy Juneteenth. Hope to see you there.
It's always wonderful to hear you sing, Dr. Dunn. That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that. And we'll be sharing that as well. And great to have the person behind the Black Men in White Coats as well. So thanks for sharing that update, and happy almost Juneteenth as well. Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Dunn, Dr. Salas, and again, Dr. Pinsky. I want to just mention for next week, we have our Grand Round speaker, Dr. Sharon Chinthraja. She will be speaking on innovations in food allergy through a multi-targeted approach. So we're looking forward to that as well. And as well as really great Grand Rounds panelist group the week after that. So we'll be sharing updates on that as well soon. I want to now turn it over to introduce our Grand Round speaker, Dr. Schulman. Thanks so much for helping, number one, introduce our presenter and help moderate, but also helping come up with the idea to invite Dr. Makower. Really excited to learn about all the great stuff he's doing and hearing from him today. I'll turn over to you, Dr. Schulman.
Great. Well, thank you so much. It's really a great pleasure to introduce Josh Makower today. He's the Boston Scientific Applied Bioengineering Professor of Medicine and of Bioengineering here at Stanford in the Schools of Medicine and Engineering. And he's the director and actually the original co-founder of the Stanford Biocenters for Biodesign. Josh started this with Paul Yak 20 years ago, left to develop ExploraMed, which is a medical device incubator that's created over 10 companies over the past 20 years. He holds 300 patents and patent applications for various devices across diverse fields of medicine. It's really exciting to have Josh back to run our biodesign program and to learn more about that, and also his new biodesign fellowship, health policy fellowship. Josh is a graduate of NYU School of Medicine. Turns out we were there together, we just found out. He received an MBA from Columbia University, and his undergraduate degree was from MIT. He's a member of the National Academy of Engineering. Josh, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Really appreciate being here, and very honored to have the opportunity to talk to you all and share what is really sort of my life's work, focus on innovation. Just a quick disclaimer that some of the companies I'll mention up front in this talk, I am a founder of and have a personal financial interest in. This is just to kick us off, sort of a one-shot view of my life, and the first layer, top layer, being the organizations I've been attached to, the middle layer, the companies that I've had an opportunity to create in a variety of fields, and then sort of the bottom layer, things that I've gotten involved with through some of those activities, and that policy work in bringing FDAsia into law will be touch on that later. So it all sort of starts here. Growing up, even when I was going through medical school, the idea of where innovations came from was somewhat mysterious. The idea maybe of some chance discovery, a petri dish that didn't look right, what have you, a chance observation that there was a image on a screen when an X-ray was applied and someone's hand was nearby. Those types of discoveries seem to be quite prevalent in the history of medicine. But the idea that you could intentionally do this was sort of out of the picture. I mean, there were inventors. I think we perceived them as Thomas Edison types, tirelessly working in a lab somewhere, coming up with an idea, but certainly not out there with patients and with customers. And that all changed for me when I had this rare opportunity. This is Hank McKinnell, who is the former CEO, and at the time that I met him, Chief Financial Officer and VP of Strategic Planning at Pfizer. I came in as fresh out of medical school, looking to apply my medical degree to innovation and building, new technologies. And I was very fortunate because he gave me a project. And, what I try to teach students and what I have learned is that, this
Hello, everyone. We're obviously having some technical difficulties. Just bear with us for just a moment.
Okay, I'm back.
There we go.
So that wasn't me then. Can you all hear me?
We can now, Josh. I think the whole system went down. So
Wow.
thanks for bearing with us.
No worries.
Yeah.
Shall I resume or?
Yes.
All right, let me put the slides back up. So that gave me this rare opportunity as an early person in my career to go interview the founders of all these very interesting companies, which are depicted on the slide, and understand how they went about their innovations. And then I also had the opportunity to interview the teams that were now executing on these projects inside of Pfizer. And that was very enlightening, because what I discovered was that how they innovate is very different. And what I observed was that when they are in their, let's say, founding mode, they're trying to solve a problem and they don't have a particular technology in mind. And so they are using the technology to bring to the problem rather than vice versa. Whereas once they're successful, let's say they're a balloon company doing angioplasty, well, the next thing they're thinking is, how do I use my balloon somewhere else? And that obviously is much more incremental. And then how do I make the balloon slightly better? So that type of innovation is much more incremental. So I went back to Hank and I said, hey, this is what's going on. They're basically biased by their existing solutions, whereas when they were startups, they weren't. And he said, well, can we do this here? And I said, well, I imagine you can. Just get rid of the biases. He says, well, go prove it. And so he gave me a small budget, and I put together this program called Fresh Tech inside of Pfizer, with the PF, obviously, for Pfizer. And we started working on a process. And what you see here is basically the outline of the process, which is, first you want to decide what you want to do. Then free yourself of all frameworks of solutions and go in and find the need and focus on that need and characterize it and create need criteria. Identify, essentially, before you've invented it, what does this thing need to do? Who does it need to serve? What are the outcomes that everybody's looking for? And really lock that down and understand that first before you get to any solutions. And then you brainstorm, and so on and so on. So it was a very simple ordering of a process, but it worked. And we basically, within Pfizer, produced a number of innovations, some of which became products. But obviously working inside of a big company was, somewhat frustrating, but we proved that it could work. And, I dreamed of doing this without the confines of a large company. And so that's why in 1995, I founded this company called ExploreMed, which is basically an incubator, taking that same methodology and applying it as in more of a startup environment. And what I'm going to share with you is a couple of the innovations that we produced through that process, and just go through the need spec, and then the solution, and then sort of what happened. And I'll do this very quickly, but Acclarent is a good example of this. It's a solution for chronic sinusitis. The need, actually, this is one that actually I dealt with personally. I was a chronic sinusitis sufferer myself, and really frustrated with the options. You either have this very invasive bloody surgery, or you have drugs, and the bloody surgery has all sorts of complications, and the drugs don't work that well. And so there's a large group of people in the middle like me who are not being well served. After going in and observing, we discovered that there's actually a mechanical problem that needs to be addressed, and if you could do it less traumatically, you could actually produce the same type of excellent outcomes of sort of widening and opening without the downside of all the trauma. And that's what balloon sinuplasty is, and this is now a division of J&J. Another example, benign prostatic hypertrophy, most common condition affecting males over the age of 50. Big issue. The existing, let's say, gold standard was TURP, which is a transurethral resection. Very successful procedure in the sense of improving flow rate, but still challenged by a fairly high rate of impotence and incontinence, which are outcomes that you'd really rather not have, especially if those things are important to you, which basically is important to everybody. So what are the alternatives? And there had been multiple attempts at, let's say, minimally invasive BPH treatments, but they weren't really successful. Many of them used energy. They sort of beat up the prostate got swollen, patient gets worse for several weeks before they get better. I mean, it's not a great thing, and people aren't going to tell their friends, hey, I had this great procedure, which I had to wear a catheter for several weeks. And my other friend got the standard procedure, and he bled for a while, so those don't sound like great options. So we knew what the target was. We knew what the spec was. It needed to be something that could be done in an office, minimally, little anesthesia, get done within a half hour, and patient jumps off the table and pees, and it's durable and does not need to be repeated in the vast majority of people. That was the spec. The invention here, you can see below, is an idea of a mechanical way of doing it very instantaneously with very small clips that you're essentially stitching the prostate to itself. And there was a discovery here, basically just understanding that the prostate's spongy and you can sew it to itself. And this is now the urology division of Teleflex. Other very, very similar processes. Similar type of situation, early stage arthritis, still not well solved. Lots of alternatives have been proposed: cell therapy, hyaluronic acid injections. They're short-lived and they really have not taken hold. Your alternative is a total knee replacement or a partial knee replacement. Those have a very, let's say, short life, especially for if you're a young person. You got about 10 years of that, and then you need to have it replaced. And as you keep on having them replaced, the surgery gets more and more complicated and more dangerous as you get older. So what can we do for these people? And right now we're giving them drugs. We're giving them, telling them to lay off their knees. They're gaining weight. Not a good solution. So there is still a need here. And this is a company that has just completed their clinical trial, submitted to the FDA. It's under review right now. Hopefully will be available shortly in the United States. But the idea is that you're just going to take the pressure off. You're going to put in minimally invasively under the skin, outside of the capsule, a force relieving member that's going to keep that part of the knee, the medial aspect where most osteoarthritis starts, keep the pressure off, allow that part to become less inflamed, and also stop the progression of the disease and instantly improve the pain and decrease the pain and improve the function. So that's MoxyMed. Other examples, exact same process, by the way. Need: moms struggle with breastfeeding, and as moms have a lot to do, and they have kids, they have jobs, they have all sorts of other things that they need to deal with, and being attached to a wall with a loud machine that can't be easily portable is not a great solution for them. And therefore, many women stop breastfeeding as a result. And of course, as we know, breastfeeding is really beneficial for both mom and baby. So how do we address this and make this more compatible with modern daily life? And the idea of a portable, completely wearable breast pump came as a solution. This is now available in the United States, and a growing company and a really great, successful, life-transforming company for women. First fully wearable breast pump. And lastly, within the ExploreMed portfolio of companies, similar, exact same process. What's the biggest unsolved problem in skin? Cellulite. 85% of women in the United States have cellulite. Many are concerned about it. Many want to have something done about it. And yet really bad therapies, a lot of bruising, a lot of minimally invasive things have been attempted. They either don't work, or they recur, or they really create a lot of trauma. Sometimes the trauma results in permanent skin staining. How do you do this better? We looked at it, again, process of finding need criteria, going to brainstorming, and we said, well, what we really need to know is just sever the small fibers that are holding back that part of the skin, and just that, don't create any collateral damage. How do you do it? Our invention was to guide in with a lighted probe right to the spot, know where you are, test the fibers to recreate the lesion before you cut it, and then selectively cut, so that you're just severing just these few millimeters of fibers. Obviously less trauma, less bleeding, better outcomes, et cetera. And so this is approved now and being launched here in the United States. So over this course, so I'd say as an independent practitioner of innovation, I think we've proven that the methodology can work in a startup environment. But then I had this amazing opportunity, a friend, colleague, someone I work with on one of my companies called Transvascular, Dr. Paul Yak, who is well known to all of you, really a true innovator and a brilliant and extremely kind and generous man, offered me this amazing opportunity to partner with him to create Biodesign and to bring this process to Biodesign as sort of a cornerstone of what we would do together in what we called the innovation program. And so the idea here was to take what I had, sort of been so successful in as an independent entrepreneur, and modify it to broaden it and make it something that we can train others to do. And that was the real vision, is, how great would it be if we could train others on this methodology and have them use it successfully in their careers to help even many more people. And I love the vision and have appreciated that partnership. And Paul brought me in back in 2000, and we started Biodesign 2021, all with around this basic idea that innovation is a principle. It can be learned, it can be taught. It's a discipline, and it's like anything else. You learn how to do it, and then you can get good at it. And that's sort of what we believe, and I think, as you see here, that we have proven. So what is the biodesign process? It looks a lot like what I described earlier. You figure out what you want to be when you grow up, you go after it, and you create, you get into the clinic, you immerse yourself, you learn, and then try to create that need criteria, that need spec, as I like to call it, that you're going to invent to, and try to make sure that need spec does not have any embedded solutions in it that bias you towards one or another direction. With that framework, you really have the perfect opportunity to test ideas and see if they're ever going to be successful right there at the idea stage before you've invested $1. And so we really do believe that a well-characterized need is the DNA of the invention. It's right there. It's either base pairs are going to match or they're not. And if they don't match, don't do it. It doesn't meet the needs. Keep on looking. And that process, that early process, allows you to filter out and get rid of a whole bunch of stuff that you might otherwise do that would seem actually sort of attractive and maybe even innovative, but not necessarily successful. And that's what we're trying to do, is accelerate and improve the probability of success of innovators with this methodology. And so we've been, training innovators for 20 years. All different types of folks, undergrads, graduate students, fellows in our own fellowship program. It's quite an extensive array of courses that Biodesign has evolved to create. And again, just a shout out to Dr. Paul Yock for his leadership and vision in really leading this program over the last 20 years. It's been an amazing expansion. And I'll just talk about some of what those accomplishments have been. We've reached, today we reached this group here. Obviously, we have 12 fellows who spend an extensive amount of time with us, but we also train Stanford faculty through something called the BFF Biodesign Fellowship Faculty Program. If you'd like to be a BFF, talk to your chairman. We would love to have you. There's been some great success stories here. We also train global faculty across the world. We train leaders in other institutions so that they can set up biodesign programs in their countries and their locations. And that's also been very successful. Lots of students in the graduate course, and of course, we also train executives. So we most recently had 8 large multinationals in, training them over several days on the methodology. And many of these have adopted this methodology in their inside of their companies to pioneer both business development and technology development. And even just the students that have been with us, just while they're students, just while they're fellows, these are the companies that they've created so far. So it works even when they're learning, which is quite remarkable. And I'm just going to talk about a few of those. And again, this is just from the program while they're here training. Probably the most outstanding success so far out of the program is this company called iRhythm. You probably use it. Maybe you have a loved one has used it. It's just a much better way to do a Holter monitor. For those that understand what that is, tracking arrhythmias when they happen, and have something that's easy to wear, easy to get the data off of, and read. And this has just been a very successful company. And Uday Kumar, who was one of the fellows in our program, invented that with their team, and it was just a great, just a great story. Another excellent, more recent story. This is a group of our fellows who came up with a way to sort of make birth control pill compliance better. And as you can see, it's won many awards, and most recently has been acquired by a larger digital health company. So a real success, and really again driven by need criteria, invention, and then implementation. And lastly, just in the example category, Kala Health. This is Kate Rosenbluth, one of our fellows, invented here with their fellowship team. While they're going in, finding needs, they came across this need that there really needs to be something better for the treatment of essential tremor. She identified an interesting neuro pathway that she could trigger with really a wearable device. And this company is making great progress and is commercially available as well. So just a few really excellent examples of now in an academic setting, but really turning into a commercial setting, how this could really make impact on patients. And thus far, we've, just those that have been trained, not talking about what they did later in their careers, which is actually maybe even twofold this number, 7.6 million patients helped. And also from an economic standpoint, the jobs, the capital, really an economic engine for the health of both of the economy as well, which we're really proud of. So lots of trainees to date out there. And this is just how the Stanford program, not including those that have been trained through our partners across the world, affiliates and others that have set up biodesign programs in many institutions, usually attached to bioengineering, sometimes inside the medical school. But they're using our textbook and methodologies to really improve the quality and probability of success. So it's a really exciting impact over all these years of this methodology. So as I mentioned, while I was here as a founder and led the innovation program for the first 5 years of its existence, in the last 15 years, I've really been just a coach and mentor for the fellows coming in to teach occasional classes, but I had to focus on my startups. As you see, there were quite a few. And then I had a stint at a venture fund called New Enterprise Associates, which is a fantastic venture fund based on the West and East Coast, and not one building not too far away from Stanford here. But when Paul was thinking about retiring, he was looking for somebody. Actually, a committee was looking for somebody, and I thought, you know what, maybe it's time to come back and maybe put one more fingerprint on this program that I think we're both so proud of. And so had this great opportunity to come back as the director. And so I signed on in August of last year and really set about a process to understand, like, well, where do we go from here? I mean, this has been so successful. How do, under Paul's leadership, how do I make sure I don't screw this up? So I made sure I did exactly what I teach our students to do, which is do some need finding. And so that's what I did. I spent time with literally over 100 folks inside and outside of the program, trying to understand what our needs are, and really came up with, sort of some major themes. First of all, I think we sit in between departments. So we're really not funded by the university. So we still have a sustainability issue, which I will be focusing on addressing and trying to make sure biodesign is here for Stanford and for the world in the future. So that's one of my main focuses, is to make sure that we can shore up our financial position to make sure that we will be here to last. The other thing, of course, is to focus on scalability, because we're doing so much. I mean, you saw how much we were actually getting done, but the team that was really doing it was so thin and so stretched. And so really trying to focus on improving that and making sure that we can position ourselves well for growth and be able to take breathers and be able to sustain our growth. And so that was the second focus. But the thirds are, sort of really how do we protect our core assets, but also what's next? What do we need to do to address the challenges and changes in the future? Where is it going? And so that's what I'm going to focus on right now, is talk a little bit about where biodesign is going. Obviously, one of the pieces of the puzzle is your team. This is the amazing team at Biodesign that I have very great fortune to work with. These are amazing folks that are each so talented. And so part one is team, always team. Team is number one. People are everything. Nothing ever gets done without a great team. I also assembled a board to help me, guide me, and really help look around the corners. And so really fortunate to have Brooke, who's named under the center here, and very, very helpful and thoughtful guy who's got a great level of experience to bring. Ingrid Ellerby, who runs our Diversity by Doing program that we partner with the Fogarty Institute on, and she's amazing, and I really appreciate her insights. David Kelly, who probably needs no introduction, founder of IDEO, founder of the D School, and similar to us, sort of an organization that's sort of a tweener between engineering, business, the medical school and other institutions on campus. So really to help me navigate. And Asha Nayak, who was really in our very first fellowship class, has been a contributor and partner through all these years and has had a very interesting career herself as a venture capitalist, as an entrepreneur, as a clinician. So another good person to sort of help us think about the future. And of course, Paul and I. And we reset, we've got ourselves all together, think about what are we going next? What is our purpose? And you'll see that, now our purpose is to advance, health outcomes and health equity through innovation, education, implementation, policy. And so there's a few new words here, and they're aspirational, and they are where we're going. And I'll talk about how we're actually going to get that done. And we also talked about trying to codify our values, and you can see what our values are here. And many of these, of course, are embedded deeply in biodesign, and there are some that are aspirational that we have room for improvement, and we will be working on those. So the number one new thrust of 3. The first one is what really is a convergence and an acknowledgement that even though biodesign has been built on med tech and digital health, there's a whole big world out there of other technologies that now can be designed. We're not back in the days where, candidate drugs were discovered by screening them through thousands of mice against all sorts of, sort of model diseases. We're at the point now where when we know an antigenic target or we know a target, we can design to it over a weekend and have a drug within a couple of days, which is remarkable and fantastic. So you can design something that's on a molecular basis as fluidly as you can, something with plastic and metal, which is very exciting. So it really now brings the whole world together. There's no reason why our fellows, faculties, and students can't have available to them the full palette of technologies that they could use to invent with. But how do we support them? How do we get the right experts to the table? How do we connect the departments on campus to this process? How do we work together collaboratively with our partners here on campus to make this happen? We're calling this Biodesign All Life Sciences. And the idea is we're still going to stay true to our techniques of need finding, need criteria, all of that. But when they get to the brainstorming phase, we're going to create the resources for them so that they can have partners on campus and across the world that can bring expertise in all of these areas. And I like to show the invention on the right, which it was invented by a former Stanford professor, Visby. This is combining almost all these circles into one. It's a consumer device. It's a digital health service. It's a handheld PCR, molecular diagnostic. It's a device. It's a physical reality thing. So it's sort of got it all in one. That's sort of where we're going. We're going to do a lot more of that, and you're going to see a lot more inventions and innovations coming out of Biodesign in partnership with all of you. I look forward to working with you on this. And so this is just beginning, and we have a long way to go before we fully resource out the array of folks that we want to have attached to Biodesign and working with us to help, again, our students, innovators, executives come up with the ideas of the future. You have the technology, you have the platforms, we have a method. This is a Reese's Pieces kind of opportunity with chocolate and peanut butter coming together. So what's the next major thing? The next major thing is that historically, we've used our methodologies to train other institutions, many of them, quite well heeled with amazing resources and a great endowment and all the rest of it. And they've paid us for this, and it's been helpful because it's actually helped, make us meet the budget on our side. So it's been a good process. But, as we look to the future and we really can think about health equity, and we ask, well, what can we do? What can we do to make a difference? What can we bring to this? We realize that like I mentioned before, we have a great asset here. We can actually improve health and economic conditions with this methodology. We can create a hub where not only are we creating innovations that are really targeted at improving, let's say, the health of a underrepresented or under-resourced population, but we can also help that same group of people with economic strength, startups, investment, jobs, healthcare. It's sort of a virtuous cycle. And we have, over the last 10 plus years, done this in India. And we've had a great run. We have some folks who are incredibly dedicated to this, and over all these years have done an amazing job bringing an ecosystem to India around medtech. We can do that in other places that are even more in need. And so we are looking at the opportunity of refocusing these external global efforts towards both within the United States as well as overseas. Maybe one location overseas. We're thinking about East Africa at the moment, and then some place in the United States that is particularly needy of help from a health equity standpoint. And we're going to dedicate ourselves to those regions, and again, invest years in demonstrating that we can use this methodology to improve health for that population, improve health equity, and also improve economic conditions. And we think that altogether is actually going to make a big impact. And we hope other institutions like Stanford across the world will follow us and choose their regions to go after and make a difference. So we're going to try to create a methodology around this, a framework that will be adaptable, adoptable, and this method will be helpful, really making an impact on health equity globally. Okay, lastly, I'll just talk on this last initiative, which is probably even the largest one yet. We are going to be standing up a innovation policy program here at Biodesign. Our focus has one bias. Our bias is that we believe innovation is the key to solving problems for patients' health. We don't necessarily believe that just making whatever we're doing right now cheaper is the solution. We think that innovation is going to be required. So with that understanding of that bias, then we move forward and we say, well, look at all of the barriers that exist out in the world preventing innovators from getting their innovations to patients. It's daunting, reimbursement, regulatory, et cetera. And now there's threats to the patent system from various forces. We really have a lot of challenges, but we have seen where, and I have personal experience in this, as I mentioned, in being one of the folks that was very, and I want to credit Lynn Denend and Stanford here as well, with me partnering on a research piece that helped enlighten, I think, the entire Congress, White House, and the FDA as to what the challenges with the FDA were back in the 2008, 2010, 12 timeframe, and that those changes got put into law, and wow, what a difference it's made. So through that process, I really learned about how you make change. How do you really make change in policy? People told me it wasn't possible. It is possible, but one of the keys is you have to have data. But the data has to come from a place like Stanford, or some place that doesn't have a dog in the hunt. Some place that can point out the facts without it obviously being biased towards one product or another. And so, what we're going to do here is we're going to train the next generation of leaders in policy who have a understanding of innovation, have an interest in innovation. I hope these folks find their way into the FDA. Leading CMS. I hope that they find their way into the staffers, leading staffing locations in the White House, inside of Congress, congressional members' health teams. Think about the difference that they could make if they just really understood what it took to innovate. So we're going to train these folks. They're going to come here, spend a year with us alongside our innovation fellows, and then they're going to spend their second year in DC, working in an agency, or maybe in somewhere in Congress or the White House. And through those two experiences, we think we'll be able to really culminate a career, an individual who's interested in policy. Maybe they've trained here with Doug Owens in the policy department or other places on campus. Maybe they come from other places across the world, but they have a real interest in policy, but don't understand innovation. This is our opportunity. Let's give them a chance to understand innovation. So that's what we're going to do. And that's a 2-year program. We're recruiting for it now. If you're interested or someone who's interested, please apply. we'll be making our selections in the fourth quarter of this year and getting the first fellows in August of 2023. Now, alongside this fellowship and really wrapped around it, just like we built the main fellowship program, we're going to be doing research too, very much focused on innovation and the roadblocks and opportunities and issues that our innovators face, and elevating those issues to Congress and CMS and so on as they come up with new laws and bills and rules. We want to bring that data up. And so we will be, our fellows are actually going to be our research team. So they get to be the researchers, they get to get their hands dirty, understand the data, then they get to present it and start to get a national acknowledgement for that. And that puts them in the room where it happens, and then so on and so on. So that's what it's all about, creating this engagement around data and really propelling the careers of the next generation of policymakers. I'll just use as one example of this, just as sort of let's say the pilot trial of this idea. We very quickly, as I started in August, put together a team led by Sandy Ruggles. We partnered with Kevin Schulman here and others to do some research into the issues that companies are facing in getting their products to full coverage under CMS. It was very enlightening. Almost 5 years after FDA approval, it took until all Medicare recipients could have access. That is a very long time, especially for Medicare recipients. I think that message resonates. Again, put us in the room where it happens. We're having a continuing ongoing dialogue with thought leaders like those over at Duke Margolis, Mark McClellan, and most importantly, CMS. And we put ourselves in. We're able to try to help and really make a difference for innovation for all of you, to get you the technologies that you need to help treat your patients better. And that's what our mission is. So in summary, these are the 3 new areas for biodesign. I couldn't be more thrilled to have the opportunity to look at the future and do this, building off of what Paul's amazing success has been. And then, just a reminder, we're really all about people. We're a training organization. And it's the people that we train that will go out there and change the world that we really get so excited about. So with that, I'll close and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak at Grants Rounds today. Thanks so much.
Josh, thank you so much for joining us this morning. If people want to put their questions in the Q&A, that'd be great. And we'll try to get to as many of them as we can. This is such a remarkable, it's great to, go back through this history of innovation and how much of an impact it's, there's nowhere else in the world that you could tell a story like that about looking at these unmet needs and bringing solutions to patients in the US and globally. As at some level, the micro vision is so clear, this methodology is so powerful and so proven. The idea about the macro vision, like how do we, there's so many needs out there. How do you prioritize the different needs?
Yeah, it's a great point. And, we do send our students into the environment to embed. They literally come back with hundreds. We have them really look at them in terms of impact. So they will prioritize and choose one. There are some needs that can't be solved yet. The technology is not there yet. The right idea hasn't arrived yet, but at least you can understand what the framework would be to solve it. And so that's, so we do, this is the whole idea why training so many folks across the world has a value, is that everybody's going to take on, if we all just take on one of those on the list, then we'll really make an impact. So any one person, any one group is really all going to tackle one thing at a time. But it's super exciting to think about what could happen with the masses of folks going out there and tackling one problem or next.
Great. Megan Mahoney has a question.
Yes, thank you so much for this illuminating talk, Dr. Makower. I really appreciated your entire journey, very inspiring. And I also appreciated your discussion about the role of academia in leading the way in biodesign and innovation, particularly as it pertains to national health policy. I just had a question. I wondered if you could expound upon two different approaches with innovation. One is developing innovation in a certain ecosystem, and then for health equity purposes, expanding it out for adoption in a diverse community, versus developing the innovation. And you mentioned the Global Health Initiative in East Africa within a certain region that does address health equity, and then developing that innovation broadly from there. So any comments there?
Absolutely. I'm a firm believer that you need to innovate where it happens. You can't innovate remote. So the whole idea of this partnership that we're talking about in East Africa as an example is we're going to go there. We're going to work with the leaders there. We're going to train the faculty there, the students there. They will focus on the needs there. They may be using the same framework that we've sort of adopted, and it's incredibly flexible framework. There's nothing about the framework that has anything to do with any solution or even any environment. The methodologies still work. Getting to the stakeholders, understanding what the challenges are, and the criteria right up front is the key. So we're going to be there, and the innovation is going to happen there. We're not going to come up with them here at Stanford. That's for sure.
Josh, a couple of questions in the chat. I'll start the first one. You, Kim, asked the question about how do we incorporate humanities and ethics in the biodesign process? Yeah,
ethics, absolutely hugely integrated. When we first started the program, we created a credo, which laid out our sort of how we intend to balance this challenge that many people in academia have, which is how do you have a for-profit health initiative? How does that work? I mean, is it for profit or is it for health? And are those in conflict? When you're an innovator, they're not in conflict. And I'll say why. Because if you want to improve the health of the greatest number of people, you need to create a sustainable business. That's the only way it's going to survive. You know, we don't have infinite grants. We don't have infinite money. There needs to be a way that any innovation can survive. So it's got to be a real business. It's got to stand up on its own legs. If it does, then it will be here forever. And that's what we train our students. You know, you got to come up with something that has to hit within the cost, within the price target. It's got to land in a certain place to be successful, but it still has to be a good business there. And that's where the innovation has to come. So the matching of those. So that's the ethics one. With respect to the humanities, I love it. And I agree. Having more of that. We do borrow a lot of ideas from the D School here, try to bring in create more ways of enhancing our creativity and stuff. But I'm a big believer in the arts. I'm a musician myself, and I think it just enriches everyone's life. So I totally agree. It's a good idea. We do have you know, what we call the biodesign shrink, you know, so we do focus on, you know, sort of how do we tolerate each other and ambiguity, all these stresses and stuff like that. But it's a good idea. Maybe we need a sort of an art teacher on the team. So a good suggestion. I'll write that one down.
Great. Our next question from Ali Kaki is there's a, you know, and this is a big issue. How do we understand innovation? When does innovation command kind of a premium in the marketplace? Is it disruptive innovation or sustaining innovation that gets a premium, or if it's just new and improved, do we have to pay more for it?
Yeah, well, I'm big believer in value. We have a whole class on value led by Peach. Value is important. You got to bring value. Can't just be new. New is not good enough. A real innovation has to make things better, has to improve health. Otherwise, people aren't going to pay for it. So new is not good enough. It's got to be better. And how do you measure better? Obviously depends on what disease you're talking about. But and then, should there be a premium? How should it be paid for, covered? I mean, sometimes these things are more expensive, but it's worth it. And hopefully, if we've done our value analysis right, and that's what we try to teach our fellows and students about value, then we navigate in the right place. So some innovations are worth paying more for because they truly are saving the system overall money. And so there is value being generated that is appreciable by and rewardable with a higher price. But we do get our students embedded in that understanding as they're innovating.
You know, Edward Perez has a question about, this is an old, a constant question here at Stanford. What's our role? Is it publishing? Is it developing intellectual property? And how do we balance the competing interests from, developing intellectual property and sharing our results?
Right. Well, here's the good news. Filing a patent is publishing. It's just delayed by about 12 to 18 months. The whole patent system was created. Patent by the word itself means to lay open, which means you put it out there. That generates innovation because you can see exactly what people are claiming. And then your job as an innovator is to do better and figure out what's next. So the patent system has actually propelled innovation. It's not anti-innovation. It's just a delay. Why is the delay important? Is it worth it? Shouldn't we just be publishing things right away? But here's the problem. If it's not patented, you're not going to get any investors. And it's going to be hard to make it this durable solution that we want to propagate across the world. It's not a business. If anyone can do it, and there's no opportunity to sort of have any unique differentiation, then most investors are going to walk away, and it's not going to be something anybody's really want to do. So we have to, that is the pathway to getting real health solutions to make an impact on the world. So it is a little bit of a trade-off in the short term, and we're talking about very short term, but in the long term, it has huge benefits to society to utilize the patent system for true innovations that could really stand up the next generation of solutions and generate that return to make investors come back and put more money in. They aren't making donations. They're actually looking on a return. And if we deliver a good return, we'll get an opportunity to continue to do those innovations in advancing health. So it's a yin yang. One of the sides of the yin can't be bigger than the yang. So they need to be equivalent. But as long as you keep them in balance, then you can get to a great outcome for patients.
Josh, let me put some words in your mouth and translate this. At some level, the goal of scholarship is impact, right? Translation to improving health. And what you're suggesting is a variety of different ways to have impact. Publishing a paper in the hopes that someone will take that idea and do something with it versus doing it yourself. So it's a really interesting way that we could think about the impact that you're having.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. What he said.
Bob Kaplan actually has a question about evidence development and from biodesign and the translation process. How do we think, how do you go from idea in the biodesign process to randomized clinical trials and evidence?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, biodesign is really focused on that upfront process of getting the idea right, landing the right technology, the right solution to a problem. Many of these later issues are things that we do provide some coaching for, but there are departments on campus who are much better at teaching how to run a proper randomized control trial than us. I mean, we have experts that we call on to help our fellow students, faculty, executives, or source formulate those. But the process generally works as, innovation for, we go through invent, then you got to do a proof of concept, some sort of first in human experience. Then you ask the question, okay, can this work? Is this safe? Is this efficacious? You get it, you prove safety and efficacy to be able to get the opportunity to get to market. But often there's even more real world data afterwards that needs to be collected to really understand how does this get applied more broadly without the constraints of a rigid clinical trial. And so it's a stepwise process of evidence development. it's sort of required for reimbursement. So in general, many of the companies and innovators that have passed through our doors wind up doing all of this because it's necessary. You can't be in business without it.
Josh, Kilchu had a question. I'm gonna change the words around a little bit, but basically, how do we go back and evaluate what happened? So you now have 20 years of innovation that's gone to the market. Did the things work out as intended, or were there challenges that weren't anticipated?
Yeah, it's a great question, and in fact, you're bringing up. We're working with some experts to try to implant health equity perspectives into our actual process and make sure we ask this question precisely, which is, what are the unintended consequences of this innovation, which we rarely have asked in the past. And I really, really think it's a great suggestion. So, we're learning too. And I'm sure there have been unintended consequences of some of the inventions that we've produced over the years, but it's great to ask it, and you could ask it right there at the need stage, and we will be putting that into the process. So there is an opportunity to ask that question. Looking retrospectively, I think that on whole, it has been good. But also, as we all know, as innovators, and all of you clinicians know as well, that each innovation produces new problems and complications that then we solve with the next innovation. So we do you take 2 steps forward and 1 step back with every innovation. It'd be interesting to try to think about what those are right up front. But it's always in the pursuit of advancing impact and patient access. But truthfully, I think we do acknowledge that we always try to do more good than harm. But sometimes there's the only way we know that what impact we've really had is after we've done these clinical trials, and we can kind of see, yeah, that's a complication we should avoid, and how do we prevent it? So it's an iterative process. It certainly isn't purely successful in its complete embodiment. It is about continuing to learn and revisit and continue to re-innovate.
So Bob Harrington's our chair. Bob, you want to?
Yeah, so Josh, first off, welcome back to Stanford. This was a great introduction to the broader Department of Medicine community, of which you're now a part. So we're thrilled to have you. Your comment on do more good than harm reminds me of a paper I wrote many years ago with a mutual friend, Richard Stack, where we said that first do no harm is outdated. We really should be thinking about how to, on average, do you do more good than harm? Yeah. And certainly that's the process that you're talking about. I look forward to seeing the new directions that you've laid out so nicely. And in particular, I want to see how you do on the policy front. As you know, Stanford has a rich environment now, particularly with the new health policy department, to really tackle some of these vexing problems. So I know you're recruiting actively into the health policy realm, and all of us in the department are happy you're here, and we're really looking forward to this next iteration of biodesign. It's one of those things that I think can really be said about. It's uniquely Stanford.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here at Stanford, and an honor to present to you today at Grand Rounds. It truly is. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
No, thank you. And thanks, Kevin, for moderating, and we'll see everyone next week. So have a great week. Stay safe.